Rampage fell back laughing. I didn't say a word. I knew Blackjack wouldn't fall for the great floaty head of doom routine, Zodiac. That's 50 caps you owe me. The ghostly mare snorted, and one of the protective ponies trotted over to Rampage. A little door opened up, and out tumbled a hoof full of caps. Here, hold these for me, Blackjack, she said as she dumped them in my bags. I noted that my pip-buck counted only 45 caps. The flickering, ghostly silver mare looked at me and snorted softly. Fine. Again, without the show mareship, I'm Professor Zodiac, head of the collegiate. I was hoping to talk to you earlier, but you simply trotted out of here. Wanted a word before you left again. About what? I asked sullenly, suspicious of flashy ponies wanting things from me. And I just knew it had to be something to do with the program in my pip-buck. Your bill, she replied. We utilized a considerable amount of our limited supplies, time, and resources to restore you and your friends. You in particular, she said with a grin, pointing a hoof at me. More than we would have for any pony else. Certainly more than we would have for free. I blinked and considered the caps we'd amassed. How much do you want? I think I can swing a few thousand. Oh, you just used enough healing materials to well exceed that. One trip to the booth costs 5,000 caps. So we're looking at about, for the 5 of you treated, and you 2 additional times, plus surgery, healing potions, rejuvenation talismans, and time, 50,000 caps, she said with a grin. Rounded down. My mouth failed to work. Suddenly, I felt like I was back at Megamart with Deus putting a price on my head. 50,000. Oh, yes. And that's not counting hospital time for your friends, she said as she rubbed her hoofs together. But I'm happy to waive the fee and all future uses of medical facilities in exchange for EC 1101. I felt my head spin. What? What do you want it for? Project Chimera? Of course. With that, she could make all kinds of freaky new pony things to use as bounty hunters. Project Chimera? You know about that. She was momentarily surprised, but then laughed. What do I look like? A Canterlot ghoul with delusions of grandeur? Don't be ridiculous. She shook her head in amusement. I'm interested in an entirely different project, she said, then she looked at me levelly. I want Project Steel Pony Unsealed. Excuse me. Question, Rampage said as she waved her hoof over her head. What the heck are Project Chimera and Project Steel Pony? P21 nodded grimly. Yeah, I'd like to know that as well. Lacuna nodded primly, and even Scotch Tape seemed to overcome her worry to look at the glowing unicorn questioningly. Professor Zodiac smiled smugly and opened her mouth. They, I said, were secret projects during the war. Project Chimera made Gorgon from a pony named Stonewing and a cockatrice. Project Steel Pony made Deus. He was originally a soldier named Doof who was convicted of raping a squad mate. 4 pairs of eyes stared at me in shock. Zodiac's expression, though, was more intrigued. There are perhaps 3 or 4 ponies outside this room who know that information, she murmured softly. My friends were a little less sanguine about it. You mean, you know who made Deus? P21 shouted, then waved a hoof at the ghostly pony. And she wants to be able to make more of him. Gorgon was one of the Reapers I really liked. What do you mean he was made that way? Who? How? Why? Rampage demanded as she grabbed my head and looked me in the eye. Was that monster in the tunnels from that project stuff? Scotch Tape asked as she tugged at my leg. The goddess wishes an immediate explanation, Blackjack. How is it you came by this information? Lacuna said imperiously and in full goddess mode, despite her expression of discomfort. I looked from one to the next, my head spinning. Well, I must have told you. I mean, didn't I? I looked from one to the next. I mean, I told you about Golden Blood? The OIA? You never told me you found out what Chimera was, P21 said with a scowl. And the only time I heard you mention Golden Blood was when you were telling me that he was up to something. I thought you were referring to Sanguine, but you were so focused on helping Glory I didn't press you. Zodiac chuckled softly. Well, security. It looks like you got some explaining to do. But first things first. Now, as I was saying, I can take all debt and worry off your hooves in exchange for EC-1101. A robot approached, 2 mechanical arms ending in pip-buck removal keys. I was overwhelmed that I landed firmly on my butt. My friends were pissed with me, and now I owed more caps than I could ever imagine. I wanted to scream. I wanted to hand it over, along with all my questions, worries, and annoyances. Just then, I wanted to give it all to a pony who actually seemed to have a clue about what to do with the damned thing. Take my pip-buck. Enjoy. I was toast anyway. Take this damned weight off my hoof and do something better than trot all over the damn city with it. Then a clear, wonderful voice shouted over the rubble. Blackjack doesn't owe you anything. I turned and stared at the sight of Glory, looking more beautiful and radiant than I'd ever imagined, even with one wing replaced by a dull nub. She looked at me with her brilliant purple eyes and gave me a smile that made me want to melt in her embrace then and there. Zodiac frowned at Glory. Excuse me, but we spend serious money on you and your friends. Did Blackjack agree to assume these debts? Glory asked sharply, pointing her wingtip at the flickering pony projection. Of course not. She was unconscious, but Rampage... Zodiac began, but Glory cut her off with a magnificent sweep of her wing. Did Blackjack even say that Rampage spoke for her and the rest of us? You might want to collect your 50,000 caps from her. Rampage blinked. Then the striped filly suddenly grinned. Sure, I got 50 caps on me. I'll pay the rest later. Zodiac looked like she'd swallowed a shot of the price. Well, like Rampage did when she'd swallowed a shot of the price. Rampage nudged me. Hey, Blackjack, can I get my 50 caps back? Glory stepped slowly past us and walked back and forth in front of the projection. Not once did Blackjack agree to pay you anything. Not once, I bet. Did you ask her or even mention that you were going to want her to pay for it? You spent all that material before telling her so that you could spring all of it on her at once and guilt EC-1101 out of her. My jaw dropped as I stared at the shimmering mare. And it almost worked. Zodiac looked pissed for a moment, but finally slumped. Okay, I admit it. I was hoping to get her to pass it to me and leave and be grateful. But you had me unconscious for hours. Why didn't you just take it? I asked as I rose and stepped towards Glory. The professor rolled her eyes. Blackjack, do you know how much success any pony's had at taking anything from you? Your pip-buck, your life, your friends. Heck, you faced half the Zodiacs and lived. If I were Sanguine, I'd be living in constant terror of the day you'd finally track him down. She sighed. I hoped that, if I just convinced you to give the thing up, you'd move on. No harm nor foul. P21 stepped next to me. Well then, if you don't mind. Right now, I think we'd all love to hear everything Blackjack knows about everything, he said, looking a little hurt, along with an explanation about why she didn't tell us sooner. Oh, there was 50,000 caps worth of guilt right there in his expression. I hung my head and sighed. Everything I knew. Well, that wouldn't take long. It's not like I was trying to deceive you or keep it from you. It just snuck up on me, I said as I took a seat, rubbing my striped mane. Glory sat next to me, stretching her wing across my shoulders, and the others sat in a circle around me. I sighed as I was gently pulled against her, smelling her sweet hide. Heard the faint beat of her heart. Okay, I can do this. Well, I guess I should start with a pony named Golden Blood. How do I feel about Blackjack? Do I have to answer? Okay. She's She's not going to hear this, right? 'Cause, I don't want to say anything bad. Okay. Blackjack is scary. I don't really mean that I'm scared of her. I mean, I am. A little. But I know she's not a bad pony. She cares. But Blackjack, I think she's a little bit crazy. She left the stable, which is crazy. She came back, which was crazy. But she killed every pony, which was crazy. And I think if she was given the choice, she'd do all three again, which makes her crazy scary. So, I know if something bad happens, she's not going to do it smart. She doesn't think about things like that. She just does things and hopes that they'll work out. And sometimes they do, and sometimes they don't. But no matter what, she's going to do something. She doesn't just hang back and think. She goes. And if what she does is crazy, then it's better than just standing around doing nothing. I mean, she said she wet the bed. I mean, really? Thanks, Blackjack. A few hours later, their questions for me were exhausted, as was I. I told them every bit I could about Golden Blood, the OIA, and the projects. The only things I omitted were Gardens of Equestria and Spike. The professor, using more robots, had brought drinks and snacks, playing the part of the contrite host. My friends' reactions varied from worried to baffled to suspicious to bored to angry. I never expected Lacuna to be the angry one. That fiend! That plotter! Oh, the goddess does not want to hear any more! But how could the OIA pull off such a widespread deception? P-21 asked. Didn't any pony think to check up on what he was up to? The professor chuckled softly. No, Golden Blood was a sneaky bastard, but really, back then most ponies didn't think about things like that. They were used to 1,000 years of Celestia running things. Celestia always was open and honest. Luna's government was a different thing, as night from day, using deception and obfuscation to make ponies confused and obedient. And Golden Blood knew all the loopholes, tricks, and intricacies. After all, he helped Luna set them up. She rubbed her ghostly chin, and I suspect that Luna herself enjoyed the games on some level. But you can't tell me the Ministry Mayors were okay with that, Glory protested as I slumped against her shoulder. Had she always smelled this good? The professor shrugged. They were used to working with Celestia, too. They expected straightforward deals from the ruler. Friendship. Trust. She sighed and shook her head. Luna respected the Ministry Mayors and their capabilities. But, really, I was always shocked that they were sucked in as readily as they were. They really seemed to believe Luna was their friend. I doubt that princess ever had a real friend. I looked at the shimmering projection. The others followed my gaze, and then P-21 asked the question on all of our minds. What are you, and how do you know all this? The shimmering image seemed to consider him before responding. I am Professor Zodiac. What you're looking at is an arcane projection, a nice little modification of the planetarium system developed by Flash Industries. It's a pleasant way for me to have conversations with ponies. She gave a little shudder as I nearly missed. As for how I know, well, I was there 200 years ago. She looked right into my eyes and gave an apologetic little smile. I was one of the research leads of the OIA.